Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the third part of the half-term report series. If you did miss the previous two parts, I'll pop a card on screen now so you can go and check them out. But in this part, I'm covering the final two teams in the midfield, and they are, of course, Haas and Renault. Let's start by having a look at Haas then, and without a doubt, they have been the biggest surprise for me this year. Last season, they were kind of in no man's land almost and ended the season languishing towards the back end of the grid. However, after switching development to their 2018 car early, they have made a huge leap forward this year. They're also locked in a great scrap with Renault to be best of the rest, and on the pace they have delivered so far this season, particularly over the last few races, the general feeling is that they are the fourth quickest on the grid. What a leap forward that is. Now, there is a controversial side, I guess, and that all comes down to the help they've received from Ferrari in terms of some of the parts supplied. The thing is though, so what? All the stuff supplied to Haas from Ferrari is supplied well within the rules. And it is also worth noting, without going on too much of a rant about it, the agreement is exactly the same as the one that Haas and Ferrari had last year, and none of the teams complaining now were complaining last year. Isn't it funny how it became an issue once Haas started beating them? Just saying, classic F1 politics. But the point is, the team have used everything available to them to build a good car around the parts supplied. They deserve a hell of a lot of credit, they really do. Another thing that's helped Haas massively this year has been Kevin Magnussen. He's another one of those drivers that's been an absolute revelation this year. Over the winter, and yes I know, I've said this many times, I was very critical of him. 2017 was not a good year, but in 2018, he's put all of that behind him and really stepped up to the mark. Another driver who has impressed me massively, and aside from the championship fight, and perhaps this is too early to say, but he may well be an early contender for driver of the season. K-Mag has racked up a hugely impressive 45 points, and that has gone a long way towards helping the team to their tally of 66 and to 5th in the Constructors' Championship. But as we all know by now, it could have been so much more without those team errors. Think back to Australia, that now infamous issue with the pit stops that saw both their drivers retire from very strong positions in the race. But what you have to say about Haas is they bounced back as a unit and recovered well. Back to K-Mag though, and for me, his best drive of the year so far was in Austria. It was just one of those that kind of confirmed how far K-Mag has come this season. He just needs to keep doing what he's doing and build on that first half of the year, very much like the team. And he's putting himself in a very good position when it comes to the driver market. There could be a lot of shifting soon in that midfield, and although Haas should be strong next year, it could well open up opportunities for him. But where Magnussen has surprised in a good way, his teammate Romain Grosjean has surprised in a whole other way. I firmly believed pre-season that Romain would easily outshine Magnussen in 2018, and look at that, how wrong was I? The Frenchman has had a very poor start to the season, and although good drives in Germany and Hungary have shown his season could well be turning, his performances prior to that were not good at all. Certainly not for a driver of his experience. He has just 21 points on the board, ironically only 7 points less than he picked up through the whole of last season, albeit in a far worse car at the time, and has failed to finish on 4 occasions and not picked up points at 9 of the opening 12 rounds. And those retirements aren't out of bad luck. Some were very stupid mistakes, and at least one was reminiscent of the Grosjean of old. But that's not to say that he hasn't been unlucky at times this season. In some races, I think back to Bahrain with things flying off his car, back to Australia, of course, as well. But it's his mistakes that people tend to focus on. He was very impressive in Austria and took full advantage of others' issues to take 4th place. And as I've already mentioned, his drives in Germany and Hungary have given him a great foundation to build on now. He needs a big second half to 2018 and needs to start matching his teammate at the very least. In terms of grades, and I've got a feeling you're going to tell me I'm really harsh on this, I'm going to give the team a B. Okay, it could be higher, but frankly, so could they. If it weren't for that huge pit stop issue in Australia and some other problems this season, and with arguably the 4th fastest car on the grid anyway, could have been well on their way to being best of the rest. K-Mag, he's got to get an A for me, and I never thought I'd be saying that at the start of the season. And that is for all the reasons I've already outlined in this video. He really has surprised me big time. However, despite a solid last couple of races, and yeah, throw Austria in there too, I'm giving Grosjean a D. And I think that's more than fair. To be clear, it's only because of those last few races where he's shown us the glimpses of his ability, particularly Austria, that he gets such a high grade. Prior to Germany, quite frankly, he was on course for a very generous E. The second and final team I'm going to look at in this video is, of course, Renault, and I have been pleasantly surprised by them this year, but not really stunned. Since they rejoined the sport with full manufacturer status, they have continued to improve year on year, and I fully expected them to do the same in 2018, and they have. But as I was just saying, perhaps they are fortunate in some ways, as Haas could have been a lot closer to them. But Renault have just kind of gone about their business, quietly delivering in qualifying and turning good grid slots into very good results. And I'm kind of saying this back and thinking that the way I'm wording this makes it sound like I'm taking something away from what they've achieved, but it really isn't meant that way. The team have so far grabbed themselves a very impressive 82 points this season. And to give that some kind of context, they are pushing 2.5 times the tally they had after 12 rounds last year. And if they can continue to deliver consistency and updates to that car, they could well fend off any challenge from Haas to be the best of the rest. But it will be tough, and that fight, very much like the championship battle, is going to go all the way. It's so close in that midfield. But as of right now, making a guess, a bit of a prediction, which isn't kind of the point of these videos, but there you go. I kind of feel like Renault will just pip Haas to it, and I mean just. They don't have the best power unit on the grid by a fair way, but they are getting some solid reliability from it, and their chassis is regarded by many as one of, if not the best in the midfield. It's just a case of whether or not they're going to develop that anymore, with teams now starting to focus on those 2019 regulation changes. Nico Hülkenberg has, once again and somewhat unsurprisingly, shown what he can do, and just why he is so highly rated among some. 52 points so far in 2018 and 7th in the Drivers' Championship is certainly not to be sniffed at. And I think it's fair to say he has consistently outperformed his equally highly rated teammate, Carlos Sainz. I should also point out as well that the German has failed to finish on 3 occasions this season, but is still beating Sainz by a fair margin. There's not really a lot I can say about Hülkenberg in his first half of the season. He's just been impressive and a bit like the team, just going about his business quietly, slipping under the radar a little bit, and he's delivering. But in terms of the rest of the year, what Nico needs to do is to just try and maintain his current level and try and stake a claim on that seat at Renault. I will say though, it would be nice to see him grab a podium before the end of the year. It would just be a great way to round up what's been a solid first half of the season. It's long overdue. As for Carlos Sainz, quite frankly, he's really disappointed me in 2018. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's been okay, but he is 22 points off his teammate despite reaching the checkered flag on 2 more occasions. Honestly, I really did expect a lot more from him. Again, please don't get me wrong, he hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't really shone through, and that needs to change between now and the end of the season. That is, of course, assuming that he stays with Renault. The thing is, though, he has actually been fairly consistent. He's scored in 8 of the opening 12 rounds and looks alright, to be fair. But I can't ignore that gap to Hülkenberg. It should not be that big. I will defend him to a point now, and we have to remember that this is his first full season with the team, whereas, of course, Nico has been with them for a while. So it is always going to take him time to settle in, I suppose. But that excuse is fine now, but that won't wash for the second half of the year. As you'll have already seen, I've given the team a B. I feel like that is about right, to be honest. To kind of explain that, they've been a pleasant surprise, but not hugely surprising, as I've already said. You know, if they were right up there with Red Bull or a lot closer to them, and there was a huge gap to the teams behind them, they'd probably end up with an A. But they're kind of where I expected them to be. Nico Hülkenberg also gets a B. He has been very impressive this year, and his consistency is solid. But I kind of feel as though he is matching the car's performance, if that makes any sense as well. You look at Alonso at McLaren, he's dragging that car to good results. He's outperforming it. Whereas Nico Hülkenberg isn't doing that, but at the same time he isn't underperforming as well. He's just matching it. Carlos Sainz, though, I'm going to give him a C, and I know I'm going to get some stick for that. Look, I like Sainz, I really do, but I expected so much more from him this year, and he has been solidly outperformed by his teammate in the races. But he is improving, particularly when it comes to qualifying, so although it's only a C now, come the end of the season I fully expect that will be a higher grade, because he's definitely growing into that car. That is it for part 3 of the half-term report series, and as ever they were just my thoughts and my opinions on Haas and Renault, but what are yours? How would you grade the teams and their drivers? Have any of them really surprised you so far this season? And who do you think will come out on top in that fight for 4th? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I will be back on Thursday with the final half-term report, which I know is the one you're all looking forward to. And I'll be focusing obviously on Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes and that championship fight. And of course, there will be even more content coming up for the rest of the summer break as well. In the meantime, though, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.